Here's a big one for every civic leader here today, and it does apply to business leaders as well. How do we build cohesive communities in the midst of all of that change and the potential polarization that comes with things like digitization? Now, urbanization is not all a bad thing. We know already that 50% of the world lives in big cities. But did you know that in 2015, more than half of Africa will live in big cities? By 2030, more than 60% of India will live in big cities, which will multiply their energy needs by a factor of 3 or 4. Huge implications for the environment again. In fact, by 2030, there will be 5 billion people. Almost the population of Earth. The Earth's population as of this month is 7 billion people. 5 billion by 2030 will be living in large cities. Now, that's a good thing in some ways. A study recently showed that 100 cities on Earth are responsible for 30% of the Earth's economic output and 90% of its innovation. That makes sense. If ideas are going to connect, people must connect, and they do that better in cities than anywhere else. So cities, urbanization is not a bad thing. London already has a bigger GDP than Sweden or Switzerland. Hong Kong already gets more visitors in a year than India. So in some ways, in the next 10 years, cities, large cities, will take on the role of nation states in some areas. But there are costs associated with urbanization, and I know that in Stoke-on-Trent, which has a rather unusual structure, your 6 towns in a city structure, this is going to be a challenge for you as it is for the big cities. In fact, in some ways, regional cities face a bigger challenge because we don't have the same infrastructure to deal with change. For many people, urbanization combined with digitization leads to what I like to call urban isolation. And that brings with it all kinds of ramifications in terms of inter-ethnic unrest, tribalism of a negative kind. I know that here in Stoke we faced some of that in the past on a racial basis, but that's not the only kind of tribalism there is. By the way, not all tribalism is bad. Similarities attract. We are naturally, scientifically proven, attracted to people who are similar to us. If I take 5 of you today, put you in another room and show you a photograph of someone you've never met, and I say, tell me about this person, tell me your impressions, you'll give me a story. If I take another 5, put you in another room, same photograph, but before I ask you to tell the story, I say, you know, this person has the same birthday as you. You will always, or nearly always, give a more positive impression of the person when you know they have your birth date, even if they have a different skin color and look nothing like you. Similarities attract. Somehow we're hardwired for sociability and sharing, looking for points of connection. But some forms of tribalism are not so helpful. This is a challenge with rapid urbanization. There are health issues that come with rapid urbanization, not the least of which are the psychological stresses. 1 in 4 Britons today, 1 in 4 Britons today, 25% of us, according to a leading British psychiatrist, are suffering from some kind of irrational fear. And he said most of those fears are generated by this urbanization and urban isolation. In America today, this problem is costing companies between 31 and 40 billion American dollars a year. It's impacting business. There's an emerging underclass in many of the most developed cultures of the world today because of urban isolation. In Germany right now, it's a big issue in the press and media. The emerging underclass of post-industrialized, highly skilled, lower middle class workers whose jobs have largely been taken over by robotization, who now sit at home watching TV all day, drinking more than their fair share of alcohol, and having no interest in educational or personal development. In Britain, we will face this challenge too. I think we already have, in fact, the largest gap between the very rich and the very poor than we've had in 40 years.